Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Understanding Business 2024. Narrated by Omar Mohsen Ibrahim Fouad. Chapter 4. Demanding Ethical and Socially Responsible Behavior. Page 88. Learning Objectives. After you have read and studied this chapter, you should be able to LO 4-1 explain why obeying the law is only the first step in behaving ethically. LO 4-2 ask the 3 questions you need to answer when faced with a potentially unethical action. LO 4-3 describe management's role in setting ethical standards. LO 4-4 distinguish between compliance-based and integrity-based ethics codes, and list the 6 steps in setting up a corporate ethics code. LO 4-5 define corporate social responsibility and compare corporations' responsibilities to various stakeholders. LO 4-6 analyze the role of U.S. businesses in influencing ethical behavior and social responsibility in global markets. Page 89. Getting to know Laureen Powell Jobs, founder of Emerson Collective. American philanthropy is a $485 billion industry, providing vital funds to projects that promote innovation and strengthen communities around the country. These efforts are driven by mega donors like Laureen Powell Jobs, founder and chair of the Emerson Collective. This organization invests billions of dollars in order to boost education, increase healthcare opportunities, tackle climate change and immigration issues, and expand financial services to underserved communities. When you pull one thread, you get the whole tapestry, said Powell Jobs. When you're working in the social sector, you actually cannot make any lasting forward movement if you're only focused on one thing. Powell Jobs began exploring her wide array of interests when she discovered the public library in first grade. I took adventures everywhere outside of my little town in New Jersey through books, and it gave me a whole sense of the world and what was going on, and also what was possible for me. Her childhood was also marked by tragedy after her father, a pilot, died in a plane collision when she was 3 years old. Although this traumatic event changed her family forever, it also taught her an indispensable lesson that she has carried out throughout her life. While that's very difficult for a child to make sense of, it's the greatest blessing of my life that I understand the temporal nature of our existence deeply and the fragility of everything that we witness, said Powell Jobs. To have the gift of the day is a very real and profound thing. She needed this passion for life as she worked every job available to her to save up for college. I was a babysitter. I was a lifeguard. I was a swim instructor, said Powell Jobs. When I turned 16, I first was a bus girl and then a waitress. And then for college, I had to use every source of revenue I could find. loans, scholarships, work study, and more. Waitressing. Her hard work paid off. She earned bachelor's degrees in political science and economics from the University of Pennsylvania, giving her the perfect background for a career in finance. After graduation, she joined Merrill Lynch before moving on to Goldman Sachs, where she was one of the few women working for the firm in the 1980s. Powell Jobs' time on Wall Street made her realize she was more interested in entrepreneurship than finance, inspiring her to head out west to Stanford University to pursue her master's in business administration. Along with earning another prestigious degree, Stanford is also where she met Steve Jobs, the Apple co-founder, who had recently left the company to launch his own venture, NEXT. The two fell in love and married in 1991, remaining together until Steve's death from pancreatic cancer 20 years later. Struck by another tragedy, Powell Jobs once again embraced life to its fullest by deciding to carry on Steve's legacy through a combination of philanthropy and entrepreneurship. We discussed that I would try to do my very best based on the life and the love that we had and our shared values, said Powell Jobs. I thought I would use this wealth to the very best of my ability and continue to learn as much as I possibly could, but to do it while I was alive rather than leave it to my kids. Powell Jobs already had extensive experience with nonprofits after co-founding College Track in the 1990s, an organization that provides college preparation and support for promising students in underserved communities. She leveraged her knowledge of the charitable sector to launch the Emerson Collective, which takes inspiration from the author Ralph Waldo Emerson and his quote, "In one soul, in your soul, there are resources for the world." Powell Jobs lives up to this saying by using her multi-billion-dollar fortune to fund organizations like Chicago Cred, an anti-gun violence nonprofit that offers essential services to individuals in deprived areas. Emerson also provides massive support for causes related to improving the environment and education, as well as artistic endeavors that frequently struggle to receive funding. Through her work with the Emerson Collective, Powell Jobs makes the most out of every day by doing what she can to improve the world. We are not promised life, and then we don't know how long it is. So I'm able to cherish it and be really clear about what is my highest and best use as long as I'm here, said Powell Jobs. What good stuff can I do that will be useful and meaningful? That is a driving force in my life. For ethical entrepreneurs like Laureen Powell Jobs, seeing the positive results of their work is the best part of their business. In this chapter, we explore the responsibility of businesses to their stakeholders, customers, investors, employees, and society. We look at the responsibilities of individuals as well. After all, organizations like the Emerson Collective depend on the responsible behavior and commitment of everyone involved in the business mission. Sources: Elisa Lipsky, Karaz, Laureen Powell Jobs is giving it her all. The Wall Street Journal, WSJ.com, September 28, 2022. David Gellis, Laureen Powell Jobs is putting her own dent in the universe. The New York Times, NewYorkTimes.com, February 27, 2020. Sammy Roth. Can $3.5 billion help fix climate change? Laureen Powell Jobs wants to find out. Los Angeles Times, LATimes.com, September 1st, 2022. Andrew Wallenstein, Tim Cook, Joni Ive, and Laureen Powell Jobs, remember Apple founder. Best teacher I ever had. Variety, Variety.com, September 7th, 2022. Emerson Collective, EmersonCollective.com, accessed March 2023. Page 90. This warehouse store. Page 90. Name that company. This warehouse store donates edible but unsalable food to Feeding America. Not only does this help people in need, but it keeps 67 million pounds of edible food a year out of the nation's landfills. Name that company. Find the answer in the chapter. Ethics is more than legality. LO 4-1. Explain why obeying the law is only the first step in behaving ethically. It seems new stories reporting scandals at major companies such as Wells Fargo and Volkswagen continue to stun the U.S. public. See Figure 4.1 for a summary of a few of the largest corporate scandals. Greedy borrowers and lenders alike were among those who brought the real estate, mortgage, and banking industries to the edge of a financial crisis that threatened the entire U.S. and world economies in 2008. Figure 4.1. Examples of the largest corporate scandals. Company, what happened, and result. Company, Enron Corp. What happened? Former CEO Kenneth Lay, CFO Andrew Fastow, and CEO Jeffrey Skilling were found guilty of committing accounting fraud by moving billions of dollars of debt off Enron's balance sheet, which artificially inflated the company's stock and bond prices. The executives sold millions of dollars worth of stock just before the fraud became public, while the company's pension regulations prohibited regular employees from selling their stock. Result: the executives who bankrupted the company made millions, while employees and other small investors lost $74 billion. Lay died prior to his sentencing. Fastow served a 4-year sentence which ended in 2011. Skilling originally received a 24-year sentence, but in 2013, he struck a deal to reduce his sentence by 10 years in exchange for giving $42 million to the victims of the Enron fraud. Skilling was released in February 2019. WorldCom. WorldCom's intentional accounting irregularities, not disclosing debt, and falsely counting revenue that was not received, made the company look almost $11 billion more profitable than it was. This led to the loss of 30,000 jobs and $180 billion in losses to investors. CEO Bernie Ebbers served 13 years of a 25-year sentence. He was released in December 2019 due to deteriorating health and died February 2nd, 2020. Enron's and WorldCom's collapses led to the new regulations and legislation to promote the accuracy of financial reporting for publicly held companies. The 2002 Sarbanes-Oxley Act increased the consequences for destroying, altering, or fabricating financial records and for trying to defraud shareholders. Volkswagen used special software in about 11 million of its clean diesel cars to cheat on emission results. Volkswagen was forced to recall almost 500,000 cars and pay about $25 billion in fines. CEO Martin Winterkorn resigned, and the company continues to face financial consequences and litigation risk. Freddie Mac, the federal-backed mortgage lending giant, intentionally misstated and understated $5 billion in earnings. President COO David Glenn, Chair CEO Leland Brenzel, and former CFO Vaughn Clark were fired. Lehman Brothers, the global financial services firm, hid over $50 billion in loans as sales. The company was forced into the largest bankruptcy in U.S. history, which helped spark the worldwide financial crisis. The SEC didn't prosecute due to lack of evidence. Bernie L. Madoff Investment Securities. Bernie Madoff tricked investors out of $64.8 billion in the largest ever Ponzi scheme. Madoff paid investors returns out of their own money or the money of other investors instead of out of profits. The fraud wiped out people's fortunes and ruined charities. Madoff was sentenced to 150 years plus $170 billion in restitution. In April 2021, Madoff died in prison of natural causes at the age of 82. Sources: Bernie Madoff, Corporate Finance Institute, corporatefinanceinstitute.com, February 20th, 2023. 2 out of 3 corporate frauds go undetected. Research finds University of Toronto, utoronto.ca, February 17th, 2023. Kimberly Amadio, did Fannie and Freddie cause the mortgage crisis? The Balance, thebalancemoney.com, May 2nd, 2022. Vinicius Andrade, Barbara Nascimento, and Amanda Lacone. Americana's $4 billion accounting scandal puts more scrutiny on PwC's auditing record. Bloomberg.com, February 7th, 2023. Reuters, VW faces possible recalls after emissions lawsuit defeat. Automotive News Europe, Europe.autonews.com, February 21st, 2023. Jeff Schmidt, Repo 105, how laymen recorded short-term loans as sales. Corporate Finance Institute, corporatefinanceinstitute.com, February 14th, 2023. Given the ethical lapses prevalent today, how can we restore trust in the free market system and in leaders in general? First, those who have broken the law should be punished accordingly. New laws making accounting records more transparent, easy to read and understand, and business people and others more accountable for their actions may also help. But laws alone don't make people honest, reliable, or truthful. If they did, crime would disappear. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau fined Wells Fargo $185 million for creating more than 1.5 million fake accounts and 500,000 fraudulent credit cards in customers' names without their knowledge. This brought widespread attention to a number of other scandals associated with the financial services firm, which has resulted in Wells Fargo paying out more than $6 billion in lawsuit settlements. One danger in writing new laws to correct behavior is that people may begin to think that any behavior that is within the law is also acceptable. Page 91. The measure of behavior then becomes, it is legal. A society gets into trouble when people consider only what is legal and not also what is unethical. Ethics and legality are two very different things. Although following the law is an important first step, behaving ethically requires more than that. Ethics reflects people's proper relationships with one another. How should we treat others? What responsibility should we feel for others? Legality is narrower. It refers to laws we have written to protect ourselves from fraud, theft, and violence. Many immoral and unethical acts fall well within our laws. For example, gossiping about your neighbor or sharing something told to you in confidence is unethical, but not illegal. Page 92. Ethical standards are fundamental. We define ethics as society's accepted standards of moral behavior. That is, behaviors accepted by society as right rather than wrong. Many Americans today have few moral absolutes. Many decide situationally whether it's okay to steal, lie, or text and drive. They seem to think that what is right is whatever works best for the individual, that everybody has to work out for themselves the difference between right and wrong. Such thinking may be part of the behavior that has led to scandals in government and business. This isn't the way it always was. When Thomas Jefferson wrote that all men have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, he declared it to be a self-evident truth. Going back even further in time, the Ten Commandments were not called the 10 highly tentative suggestions. In the United States, with so many diverse cultures, you might think it is impossible to identify common standards of ethical behavior. However, among sources from many different times and places, such as the Bible, Aristotle's Ethics, the Quran, and the Analects of Confucius, you'll find the following common statements of basic moral values: integrity, respect for human life, self-control, honesty, courage, and self-sacrifice are right. Cheating, cowardice, and cruelty are wrong. Furthermore, all the world's major religions support a version of what some call the Golden Rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Ethics begins with each of us. LO 4-2. Ask the 3 questions you need to answer when faced with a potentially unethical action. It is easy to criticize business and political leaders for moral and ethical shortcomings. Both managers and workers often cite low managerial ethics as a major cause of U.S. businesses' competitive woes. But employees also frequently violate safety standards and goof off during the work week. U.S. adults, in general, are not always as honest or honorable as they should be, even though volunteerism is at an all-time high according to the U.S. Census Bureau. 3 of every 4 citizens do not give any time to the community in which they live because they think it will take too much time or they don't think they are qualified. Plagiarizing material from the internet, including cutting and pasting information from websites without giving credit, is the most common form of cheating in schools today. To fight this problem, many instructors use services like Turnitin, which scans students' papers against more than 70 billion online sources to provide evidence of copying in seconds. Turnitin now includes the ability to determine if a paper was written by the student who submitted it or if it was actually written by someone else. Plagiarizing from the internet is one of the most common forms of cheating in colleges today. Remember, if you copy and paste information from a site like Wikipedia or an AI assistant like ChatGPT, it's still plagiarism. Have you ever been tempted to plagiarize a paper or project? What are the possible consequences of copying someone else's material? In a recent study, an alarming 51% of high school students admitted that they had cheated on tests in the last year. Studies have found a strong relationship between academic dishonesty among undergraduates and dishonesty at work. In response, many schools are establishing heavier consequences for cheating and requiring students to perform a certain number of hours of community service to graduate. Do you think such policies make a difference in student behavior? Page 93. Making ethical decisions. Ethics begins with you. Some days at work, you are tempted to spend most of the time playing games on your computer, watching videos, texting, sending emails to friends, or reading a book or magazine on your devices. What is the problem in this situation? What are your alternatives? What are the consequences of each alternative? Which alternative will you choose? Is your choice ethical? Choices are not always easy, and the obvious ethical solution may have personal or professional drawbacks. Imagine that your supervisor has asked you to do something you feel is unethical. You've just taken out a mortgage on a new house to make room for your first baby, due in 2 months. Not carrying out your supervisor's request may get you fired. What should you do? Sometimes there is no easy alternative in such ethical dilemmas, because you must choose between equally unsatisfactory alternatives. It can be difficult to balance ethics and other goals, such as pleasing stakeholders or advancing in your career. According to management writer Ken Blanchard and religious leader Norman Vincent Peale, it helps to ask yourself the following questions when facing an ethical dilemma. 1. Is my proposed action legal? Am I violating any law or company policy? Whether you're thinking about having a drink and driving home, gathering marketing intelligence, designing a product, hiring or firing employees, getting rid of industrial waste, or using a questionable nickname for an employee, think about the legal implications. This is the most basic question in business ethics, but it is only the first. 2. Is it balanced? Am I acting fairly? Would I want to be treated this way? Will I win everything at the expense of another? Win-lose situations often become lose-lose situations and generate retaliation from the loser. Not every situation can be completely balanced, but the health of our relationships requires us to avoid major imbalances over time. An ethical business person has a win-win attitude and tries to make decisions that benefit all. 3. How will it make me feel about myself? Would I feel proud if my family learned of my decision? My friends? Could I discuss the proposed situation or action with my supervisor? The company's clients? Will I have to hide my actions? Has someone warned me not to disclose them? What if my decision were announced on the evening news? Am I feeling unusually nervous? Decisions that go against our sense of right or wrong make us feel bad. They erode our self-esteem. That is why an ethical business person does what is proper as well as what is profitable. Individuals and companies that develop a strong ethics code and use the 3 questions above have a better chance than most of behaving ethically. The Making Ethical Decisions box gives you a chance to think about how you might make an ethical decision in the workplace. Test prep. What is ethics? How do ethics and legality differ? When faced with ethical dilemmas, what questions can you ask yourself that might help you make ethical decisions? Page 94. Managing Businesses Ethically and Responsibly. LO4-3. Describe management's role in setting ethical standards. Ethics is caught more than it is taught. That is, People learn their standards and values from observing what others do, not from hearing what they say. This is as true in business as it is at home. Organizational ethics begins at the top, and the leadership and example of strong managers can help instill corporate values in employees. Trust and cooperation between workers and managers must be based on fairness, honesty, openness, and moral integrity. The same applies to relationships among businesses and between nations. A business should be managed ethically for many reasons: to maintain a good reputation, to keep existing customers and attract new ones, to avoid lawsuits, to reduce employee turnover, to avoid government intervention in the form of new laws and regulations, controlling business activities to please customers, employees, and society, and simply to do the right thing. Business can do well by doing good. For example, the companies on Ethisphere's 2022 list of the world's most ethical companies outperformed other large cap companies by over 24.6%. Some managers think ethics is a personal matter. Either individuals have ethical principles or they don't. These managers believe that they are not responsible for an individual's misdeeds and that ethics has nothing to do with management. But a growing number of people think ethics has everything to do with management. Individuals do not usually act alone. They need the implied, if not the direct, cooperation of others to behave unethically in a corporation. For example, Wells Fargo paid $3 billion to settle claims that its employees opened millions of bogus accounts, forged signatures, and moved money from real accounts to fake ones. Regulators focused on Wells Fargo incentive system. Employees secretly opened bogus accounts to hit otherwise unattainable sales targets and receive bonuses. Why did these employees resort to such tactics? Because poorly designed incentive programs rewarded them for meeting certain goals. Did their managers say directly, "Deceive the customers"? No. But the message was clear. Overly ambitious goals and incentives can create an environment in which unethical actions like these can occur. Setting corporate ethical standards. LO 4-4. Distinguish between compliance-based and integrity-based ethics codes, and list the 6 steps in setting up a corporate ethics code. More and more companies have adopted written codes of ethics. Although these codes vary greatly, they can be placed into 2 categories: compliance-based and integrity-based. See Figure 4.2, Compliance-Based Ethics Codes. Emphasize preventing unlawful behavior by increasing control and penalizing wrongdoers. Integrity-based ethics codes define the organization's guiding values, create an environment that supports ethically sound behavior, and stress shared accountability. Figure 4.2, Strategies for Ethics Management. Integrity-based ethics codes move beyond legal compliance to create a do-it-right climate that emphasizes core values such as honesty, fair play, good service to customers, a commitment to diversity, and involvement in the community. These values are ethically desirable, but not necessarily legally mandatory. Ideal, objective leaders and methods. Features of compliance based ethics codes and features of integrity based ethics codes. Ideal. Features of compliance based ethics codes. Conform to outside standards, laws, and regulations. Features of integrity based ethics codes. Conform to outside standards, laws, and regulations, and chosen internal standards. Objective. Features of compliance based ethics codes. Avoid criminal misconduct. Features of integrity based ethics codes. Enable responsible employee conduct. Leaders. Features of compliance based ethics codes. Lawyers. Features of integrity based ethics codes. Managers with aid of lawyers and others. Methods. Features of compliance based ethics codes. Education, reduced employee discretion, controls, and penalties. Features of integrity based ethics codes. Education, leadership, accountability, decision processes, controls, and penalties. Here are 6 steps many believe can improve U.S. business ethics. 1. Top management must adopt and unconditionally support an explicit corporate code of conduct. 2. Employees must understand that expectations for ethical behavior begin at the top and that senior management expects all employees to act accordingly. 3. Managers and others must be trained to consider the ethical implications of all business decisions. 4. An ethics office must be set up with which employees can communicate anonymously. Whistleblowers, insiders who report illegal or unethical behavior, must feel protected from retaliation. The Sarbanes-Oxley Act protects whistleblowers by requiring all public corporations to allow employee concerns about accounting and auditing to be submitted confidentially and anonymously. The Act also requires reinstatement and back pay to people who were punished by their employers for passing on information about fraud to authorities. We cover Sarbanes-Oxley in more detail in Chapter 17. In 2010, the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act was signed into law. Read more detail about Dodd-Frank in Chapter 18. The law includes a bounty provision that allows corporate whistleblowers who provide information that leads to a successful enforcement action to collect 10 to 30% of the total penalty for violations that exceed $1 million. The largest award was $266.4 million, and yes, it is taxable, to former Biogen Executive Vice President Michael Baduniak in 2022 for exposing that the pharmaceutical company paid illegal kickbacks to induce physicians to prescribe Biogen's multiple sclerosis drugs. 5. Outsiders such as suppliers, subcontractors, distributors, and customers must be told about the ethics program. Pressure to put aside ethical considerations often comes from the outside, and it helps employees resist such pressure when everyone knows what the ethical standards are. 6. The ethics code must be enforced with timely action if any rules are broken. When it was discovered that the Houston Astros had violated the rules of Major League Baseball and stolen signals in 2017 World Series, team owner Jim Crane immediately fired both the manager and general manager of the team. That is the most forceful way to communicate to all employees that the code is serious. Page 95. Erica Chung landed a job at the medical startup Theranos after graduating from college, but she soon discovered that the company's revolutionary blood testing technology was anything but. Chung and a colleague spoke to an investigative journalist about fraud at Theranos, leading to the downfall of a company that investors once valued at more than $1 billion. What motivates whistleblowers like Erica Chung? This last step is perhaps the most critical. No matter how well intended a company's ethics code is, it is worthless if not enforced. Enron had a written code of ethics when the giant energy trading company created off-the-books partnerships to unlawfully hide its debts and losses. By ignoring it, Enron's board and management sent employees the message that rules could be shelved when inconvenient. In contrast, Johnson & Johnson's J&J response to a cyanide poisoning crisis in the 1980s shows that enforcing ethics codes can enhance profit, although not legally required to do so. The company recalled its Tylenol products and won great praise and a reputation for corporate integrity. Today, J&J's integrity is being challenged by court cases brought by 40,000 plaintiffs claiming the company's talcum powder caused their cancers. While J&J lost some of these cases, it has been ordered to pay more than $4 billion in a Missouri case. In 2020, an appeals court reduced that figure by half. Some of the verdicts have been thrown out. In other cases, J&J won verdicts or there were hung juries. J&J is still facing more than 38,000 cases after agreeing to a $100 million settlement back in 2021. If J&J agrees to comparable settlements in all of the cases pending against it, the company would be liable for approximately $5.5 billion. How has the company's decision to continue to fight these cases affected its reputation for corporate integrity? Page 96. An important factor in enforcing an ethics code is selecting an ethics officer. The most effective ethics officers set a positive tone, communicate effectively, and relate well to employees at every level. They are equally comfortable as counselors and investigators and can be trusted to maintain confidentiality, conduct objective investigations, and ensure fairness. They can demonstrate to stakeholders that ethics is important in everything the company does. Test prep. What are compliance-based and integrity-based ethics codes? What are the 6 steps to follow in establishing an effective ethics program in a business? Corporate social responsibility. LO 4-5. Define corporate social responsibility and compare corporations' responsibilities to various stakeholders. Just as you and I need to be good citizens, contributing what we can to society, corporations need to be good citizens as well. Corporate social responsibility, CSR, is the concern businesses have for the welfare of society, not just for their owners. CSR goes well beyond being ethical. It is based on a commitment to integrity, fairness, and respect. You may be surprised to know that not everyone thinks that CSR is a good thing. Some critics of CSR believe that a manager's sole role is to compete and win in the marketplace. The late U.S. economist Milton Friedman made the famous statement that the only social responsibility of business is to make money for stockholders. He thought doing anything else was moving dangerously towards socialism. Other CSR critics believe that managers who pursue CSR are doing so with other people's money, which they invested to make more money, not to improve society. In this view, spending money on CSR activities is stealing from investors. McGraw-Hill Connect. I see it. Need help understanding the key aspects of corporate social responsibility? Click on the video for a brief animated explanation.
Grindhouse Skateboard Shop started out as a tiny storefront on the Strand and has grown into a megastore that attracts skaters from all over the U.S. Their success has led to substantial profits, but it's also compelled Grindhouse to consider how their operations are affecting the community, the customer, and the environment. A business's obligation to maximize its positive impact and minimize its negative impact on society is referred to as social responsibility. It's important to realize that social responsibility is more than just giving back. There are 4 different aspects to consider: economic, legal, ethical, and voluntary. Being profitable is the economic foundation of social responsibility. A business must first efficiently manage its resources, pay taxes, and keep the money rolling in if they are to be socially responsible at the other levels. The next step involves complying with the law. Every business and its employees must obey all local, state, and federal regulations. But just because a company isn't doing anything illegal doesn't mean that they are acting ethically. Both workers and management must have a clear understanding of the company's code of conduct, as well as what is considered right or wrong. Finally, a socially responsible company is invested in giving back to the community through philanthropic or voluntary efforts. Grindhouse is donating a percentage of its profits to build a community skate park. While projects like this are arguably the most visible part of social responsibility, companies must also fulfill the other 3 dimensions if they want to truly contribute to the greater good.
CSR defenders, in contrast, believe that businesses owe their existence to the societies they serve and cannot succeed in societies that fail. Firms have access to society's labor pool and its natural resources, in which every member of society has a stake. Even Adam Smith, the father of capitalism, believed that self-interested pursuit of profit was wrong and that benevolence was the height virtue. CSR defenders acknowledge that businesses have deep obligations to investors and should not attempt government-type social responsibility projects. However, they also argue that CSR makes more money for investors in the long run. Studies show that companies with good ethical reputations attract and retain better employees, draw more customers, and enjoy greater employee loyalty. Page 97. The social performance of a company has several dimensions. Corporate philanthropy includes charitable donations to nonprofit groups of all kinds. In 2021, corporations gave more than $21 billion to philanthropic efforts. Some make long-term commitments to one cause, such as McDonald's Ronald McDonald Houses for families whose children with critical illnesses require treatment away from home. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is by far the nation's largest philanthropic foundation, with assets of more than $55 billion. Corporate social initiatives include enhanced forms of corporate philanthropy. Corporate social initiatives differ from traditional philanthropy in that they are more directly related to the company's competencies. For example, three of the largest global logistics and transportation companies, Agility, UPS, and Maersk, work together to support humanitarian efforts during large-scale natural disasters. Their emergency relief team goes anywhere in the world to provide support in aviation, warehousing, transportation, reporting, and communications. Corporate responsibility includes essentially everything that has to do with acting responsibly within society. For example, treating employees fairly and ethically. This is especially true of businesses that operate in other countries with different labor laws than those in the United States. Corporate policy refers to the position a firm takes on social and political issues. For example, Patagonia's corporate policy includes this statement: a love of wild and beautiful places demands participation in the fight to save them and to help reverse the steep decline in the overall environmental health of our planet. Patagonia founder Yvon Chouinard is so committed to combating climate change that he gave away the company, valued at approximately $3 billion, to a newly established trust and nonprofit dedicated to using all the profits not reinvested in the company toward battling the climate crisis. The problems corporations cause get so much news coverage that people tend to get a negative view of their impact on society. But businesses make positive contributions too. Few people know, for example, that a Google program called Google.org fellowship allows employees to take up to 6 months to work for a nonprofit organization while earning their full Google salary and benefits. IBM and Wells Fargo have similar programs. These Comcast employees are sprucing up Camp Hope, a facility for veterans struggling with post-traumatic stress disorder. The company has engaged more than 1 million volunteers over the years through Comcast Cares Day. a company-wide initiative that sends staffers out to work on hundreds of volunteer projects across the country. Do companies have responsibilities to the communities in which they operate beyond obeying the laws? Page 98. In fact, many companies allow employees to give part-time help to social agencies of all kinds. For example, Fidelity Investments partnered with Common Impact to start Tech Impact Week as a way to solve some of the local nonprofit organizations' information technology related challenges. The annual hackathon involves over 1,000 Fidelity technologists helping more than 173 nonprofit projects solve IT problems. When the Fidelity volunteers identify cases that require long-term support, they provide 4 to 6 months of free consulting services. Networkforgood.com and volunteermatch.org are web-based services that link volunteers with nonprofit and public sector organizations around the country. Volunteers enter a zip code or indicate the geographic area in which they'd like to work, and the programs list organizations that could use their help. The majority of millennials surveyed said they would take a reduced salary to work for a socially responsible company. A recent study discovered that corporate donations attract customers. Nearly 3/4, 73%, of those surveyed said charitable giving Nearly 3/4, 73%, of those surveyed said charitable giving affects their buying decisions. Half said they would switch to a company that supports a cause they believe in. Page 99. Connecting through social media. Sending support on social media can backfire. Social media like Instagram and X, formerly known as Twitter, put companies in direct communication with the public, with their online accounts serving as customer service hotlines, marketing platforms, and countless other roles. Of course, brands must compete for attention with everything from viral videos to current events that capture the internet's attention for extended periods of time. Occasionally, the headlines become too big for companies to ignore, driving many of them to comment on sensitive subjects through their social media channels. These statements of support often pass through users' feeds without much notice, but sometimes they can cause major uproars that reach millions of people and lead to real-world repercussions. Adidas found itself in the latter position when it tweeted its support for the fight against racism during the weeks that followed the 2020 murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis, along with releasing a statement expressing how the sportswear brand was deeply saddened by what we see happening to our Black community in America. The company also retweeted an ad made by its arch rival Nike that emphasized the importance of diversity in all aspects of life. But Adidas' message did not receive the kind of unified response that the company had expected. Instead, followers largely criticized the brand for failing to back up its bold statements with more direct financial support and action. Then, an employee made a post that went viral on Instagram claiming the company hired people of color to connect with the Black consumer. but not to hold executive positions. Followers appeared to find evidence for this allegation when they discovered that Adidas had no black people among its core executive team, nor on its 16-person board of directors. In response to this outcry of criticism, Adidas fired a number of high-level staffers, pledged that 30% of new hires would be black or Latino, and greatly expanded its support of scholarships and programs that address racial disparities. Sources: Julian Cannon. Brands stay silent on Tyree Nichols' killing as marketers signal it as an industry backslide. Digiday.com, February 8th, 2023. Jacob Gallagher, Khadija Safdar, and Sharon Turlep. Adidas tweeted against racism. Its black workers say that isn't enough. The Wall Street Journal, WSJ.com, June 8th, 2020. Julie Cresswell and Kevin Draper. Adidas pledges to increase diversity. Some employees want more. The New York Times, NewYorkTimes.com, June 10th, 2020. Adidas, news.adidas.com, accessed March 2023. Renowned management consultant John Elkington created the phrase triple bottom line, profit, people, and planet, to describe a way of measuring corporate performance. He believes companies can be managed in a way that not only makes a profit, but also improves people's lives and the well-being of the planet. Let's look at the concept of social responsibility through the eyes of the stakeholders to whom businesses are responsible: customers, investors, employees, and society in general. See Figure 4.3 for examples of companies' social responsibility efforts. Figure 4.3, examples of corporate social responsibility efforts. Company, social responsibility efforts. The Lego Group, company. The toy maker pledged more than $400 million to make all of its packaging sustainable by 2025. The funds also will be used to educate children on environmental issues with Learning Through Play initiatives and for conversion to fully sustainable toy production practices by 2030. Social responsibility efforts. Company, Starbucks. When coffee leaf rust was destroying South American coffee crops, Starbucks R&D farm developed rust-resistant coffee plants. The company improved the lives of coffee growers by giving away the superior seeds to more than 1 million farmers and workers across 7 countries and 3 continents. Social responsibility efforts. Company, Zipline International. Zipline uses drones to distribute medical supplies to clinics hindered by impassable roads and limited storage facilities. The company is 100% focused on serving the neediest healthcare systems and has turned away customers asking it to deliver other goods. Social responsibility efforts. Company, PepsiCo, Panera, McDonald's, Nestle. These are just a few of the food companies that are providing healthier food and drink options by doing such things as switching to cage-free eggs, adopting stricter antibiotics policy, removing preservatives, reducing fat, sugar, and sodium, and adding more minerals and nutrients. Social responsibility efforts. Company GlaxoSmithKline. The pharmaceutical company delivers health care to those who are underserved. GSK no longer files drug patents. In the lowest income regions of the world in order to make drugs more accessible. It reinvests 20% of any profits it makes in the less developed countries into training health workers and building medical infrastructure. Social responsibility efforts. Company General Electric. GE invested $17 billion in research and development of clean technology such as the digital wind farm, which can boost a wind farm's energy production by 20%. Social responsibility efforts. Company MasterCard. The credit company is making it easier for charities to get help to the people who really need it quickly. MasterCard distributes cards similar to gift cards that are loaded with points redeemable for groceries, medicine, shelter, building materials, or business supplies. The cards can be made and distributed in a day or two, compared with the weeks needed to create and send paper vouchers. Coca-Cola. The soft drink company has helped 1.2 million women in 60 countries become entrepreneurs by partnering with governments and nonprofit organizations to create market-specific entrepreneurship programs. Costco. The warehouse giant partners with groups such Feeding America. The warehouse giant partners with groups such Feeding America to put The warehouse giant partners with groups such as Feeding America to put food and goods that are safe but unsellable into the hands of people who can use them. These efforts keep more than 67 million pounds of food a year out of landfills. Sources: Lego.com. Accessed March 2023. Stella Morrison. Can you make a profit and be socially responsible? Business.com. September 22nd, 2021. Starbucks.com. Accessed March 2023. Zipline International. Flyzipline.com. Accessed March 2023. PepsiCo.com. Accessed March 2023. Panera.com. Accessed March 2023. McDonald's.com. Accessed March 2023. Nestle.com. Accessed March 2023. GlaxoSmithKline. GSK.com. accessed March 2023. General Electric, GE.com, accessed March 2023. Mastercard.com, accessed March 2023. Coca-Cola Company.com, accessed March 2023. Costco.com, accessed March 2023. Responsibility to customers. President John F. Kennedy proposed 4 basic rights to consumers. 1. The right to safety. 2. The right to be informed. 3. The right to choose. And 4. The right to be heard. These rights will be achieved only if businesses and consumers recognize them and take action in the marketplace. A recurring theme of this book is the importance of pleasing customers by offering them real value. Since 3 of 5 new businesses fail, we know this responsibility is not as easy to meet as it seems. One sure way of failing to please customers is to be less than honest with them. The payoff for socially conscious behavior, however, can be new customers who admire the company's social efforts, a powerful competitive edge. Consumer behavior studies show that, all else being equal, a socially conscious company is likely to be viewed more favorably than others. In fact, a recent Greenprint study showed that 2/3 of those surveyed were willing to pay more for goods from socially responsible companies. Page 100. Given the value customers place on social efforts, how do companies make customers aware of such efforts? One tool many companies use to raise awareness of their social responsibility efforts is social media. The primary value of using social media to communicate CSR efforts is that it allows companies to reach broad and diverse groups, allows them to connect directly with customers in a low-cost, efficient way, and enables them to interact with specific groups more easily than through more traditional efforts. One very important group that most often says knowing a company is socially conscious influences their purchases and whose purchasing decisions are shaped by social media is Gen Z, those born after 2000. Think about this. The 2 billion strong Gen Z makes up 40% of the global market and has an estimated purchasing power of $360 billion. It's not enough for companies to brag about their social responsibility efforts. They must live up to the expectations they raise or face the consequences. See the connecting through social media box. When herbal tea maker Celestial Seasonings ignored its advertised image of environmental stewardship by poisoning prairie dogs on its property, it incurred customers' wrath. Customers prefer to do business with companies they trust and, even more important, don't want to do business with those they don't trust. Customers prefer to do business with companies they trust and, even more important, don't want to do business with those they don't trust. Companies earn customers' trust by demonstrating credibility over time. They can lose it at any point. For example, when it was disclosed that venerable Wells Fargo's unattainable sales quotas led employees to open millions of accounts in customers' names without their knowledge, The company was fined $180 million and 5,300 employees were fired. The CEO was forced to resign in 2016, and in 2020, bank regulators fined him $17.5 million and banned him from ever working in banking again. In 2020 alone, the company spent $2.2 billion on customer remediation. However, the biggest loss to the company by far was trust. The positive perception of the company plummeted from 60% before the scandal to 24%. Hundreds of thousands of customers dropped the company. What will Wells Fargo have to do to attract new ones? Responsibility to investors. Ethical behavior doesn't subtract from the bottom line, it adds to it. In contrast, unethical behavior, even if it seems to work in the short term, does financial damage. Those cheated are the shareholders themselves. For example, in just 11 business days in June 2022, the CEO, in just 11 business days in June 2022, 44 CEOs left U.S. corporations amid accusations of wrongdoing, and the stock prices of their companies plummeted. Many investors believe that it makes financial as well as moral sense to invest in companies that plan ahead to create a better environment. By choosing to put their money into companies whose goods and services benefit the community and the environment, investors can improve their own financial health while improving societies. Former U.S. Representative Chris Collins pleaded guilty to insider trading charges after it was revealed that he used his public office to benefit a company on whose board of directors he served. Along with a 26-month prison sentence, Collins also received a permanent ban from the SEC that prevents him from acting as an officer or director of any public company. A few investors, however, have chosen unethical means to improve their financial health. For example, insider trading uses private company information to further insiders' own fortunes or those of their family and friends. In 2014, a judge sentenced former hedge fund trader Matthew Martoma to 9 years in prison for overseeing the largest insider trading scheme in history. While working as a portfolio manager at SAC Capital, Martoma made a series of illegal trades that earned the company $275 million. The hedge fund's founder, Stephen Cohen, managed to avoid jail time, but was forced to pay a record $1.8 billion fine. Page 101. Insider trading isn't limited to company executives and their friends. For example, a former director of Barclays Bank was sentenced to 5 months in prison for passing information about upcoming mergers to a plumber he met at the marina where he docked his boat. The plumber bought stock in the companies ahead of the deal's announcements. The pair were fined $10,000 and had to forfeit their $76,000 profits. Prosecutors are increasingly using data analytics to pursue insider trading cases to ensure that the securities market remains fair and equally accessible to all. After the deluge of insider trader cases was made public in the early 2000s, the SEC adopted a new rule called Regulation FD for fair disclosure. The rule doesn't specify what information can and cannot be disclosed. It simply requires companies that release any information to share it with everybody, not just a few select people. In other words, if companies tell anyone, they must tell everyone at the same time. Some companies have misused information for their own benefit at investors' expense. When WorldCom admitted to accounting irregularities, misrepresenting its profitability, investors who have purchased its stock on the basis of the false financial reports saw share prices free fall from the mid-teens in January 2002 to less than a dime the following July. The pain was even greater for long-term investors who had bought the stock at around $60 3 years earlier. Responsibility to employees. It's been said that the best social program in the world is a job. Businesses have a responsibility to create jobs if they want to grow. Once they've done so, they must see to it that hard work and talent are fairly rewarded. Employees need realistic hope of a better future, which comes only through a chance for upward mobility. One of the most powerful influences on a company's effectiveness and financial performance is responsible human resource management. We'll discuss this in Chapter 11. If a company treats employees with respect, those employees usually will respect the company as well. Mutual respect can make a huge difference to a company's profit. In their book, Contented Cows Still Give Better Milk, Bill Catlett and Richard Haddon compared contented cow companies with common cow companies. The companies with contented employees outgrew their counterparts by 4-1 for more than 10 years. They also out-earned the common cow companies by nearly $40 billion and generated 800,000 more jobs. Catlett and Haddon attribute this difference in performance to the commitment and caring the outside companies demonstrated for their employees. One way a company can demonstrate commitment and caring is to give employees salaries and benefits that help them reach their personal goals. The wage and benefit packages offered by warehouse retailer Costco are among the best in hourly retail. Even part-time workers are covered by Costco's health plan, and the workers pay less for their coverage than at other retailers such as Walmart. Increased benefits reduce employee turnover, which at Costco is less than a third of the industry average. Replacing employees costs between 50 to 200% of their annual salaries, depending on the job and employee skills. So retaining workers is good for business as well as morale. The wage and benefit packages offered by warehouse retailer Costco are among the best in hourly retail. In fact, even part-time workers are covered by the company's healthcare plan. These generous benefits have helped reduce employee turnover to less than a third of the industry average. Why do you think Costco is so successful at keeping employees? Getting even is one of the most powerful incentives for good people to do bad things. Few disgruntled workers are desperate. Few disgruntled workers are desperate enough to commit violence in the workplace, but a great number relieve their frustrations in subtle ways, blaming mistakes on others, not accepting responsibility, manipulating budgets and expenses, making commitments they intend to ignore, hoarding resources, doing the minimum needed to get by, and making results look better than they are. Page 102. The loss of employee commitment, confidence, and trust in the company and its management can be costly indeed. According to a recent study, employee fraud cost U.S. businesses approximately $50 billion a year. In addition, employee fraud contributes to approximately 30% of business bankruptcies. Responsibility to society and the environment. More than 10% of U.S. workers in the private sector receive salaries from nonprofit organizations that receive funding from others, that in turn receive their money from businesses. Foundations, universities, and other nonprofit organizations own billions of shares in publicly held companies. As stock prices of those firms increase, businesses create more wealth to benefit society. Businesses also partly responsible for promoting social justice. Many companies believe they have a role in building communities that goes well beyond simply giving back. To them, charity is not enough. Their social contributions include cleaning up the environment, building community toilets, providing computer lessons, caring for older people, and supporting children from families with low incomes. As concern about climate change increased, the green movement emerged in nearly every aspect of daily life. What makes a product green? Some believe that a product's carbon footprint, the amount of carbon released during production, distribution, consumption, and disposal, defines how green it is. Many variables contribute to a product's carbon footprint. The the carbon footprint of a package of, say, frozen corn includes not only the carbon released by the fertilizer to grow the corn, but also the carbon in the fertilizer itself, the gas used to run the farm equipment and transport the corn to market, the electricity to make the plastic packages and power the freezers, and so on. No specific guidelines define the carbon footprint of products, businesses, or individuals, or outline how to communicate them to consumers. PepsiCo presented carbon information with a label on bags of cheese and onion potato chips. For example, that said 75 grams of CO2. Simple enough, but what does it mean? We don't know either. Researchers are trying to devise a simpler way of communicating carbon footprint information to consumers. Demand fair trade, Patagonia. Since Patagonia's founding in 1973, the outdoor apparel brand has strived to make quality goods in an ethical manner, from closely vetting its suppliers to promoting fair labor practices in factories. Patagonia believes that businesses should have a positive impact on the world. Do you think more companies should follow Patagonia's example? The green movement has provided consumers with lots of product choices. However, making those choices means sorting through the many and confusing claims made by manufacturers. The noise in the marketplace challenges even the most dedicated green activists, but taking the easy route of buying what's most readily available violates the principles of the green movement. Environmental efforts may increase a company's costs, but they also allow the company to charge higher prices, increase market share, or both. 75% of millennials say they are willing to pay more for environmentally sustainable products. The global green technology and sustainability market size is expected to grow from $11.2 billion in 2020 to $36.6 billion by 2025. Not all environmental strategies are financially beneficial. However, in the early 1990s, tuna producer Starkist responded to consumer concerns about dolphins in the eastern Pacific dying in nets set out for yellowfin tuna. The company announced it would sell only skipjack tuna from the western Pacific, which do not swim near dolphins. Unfortunately, customers were unwilling to pay a premium for dolphin-safe tuna and considered the taste of skipjack inferior, nor was there a clear environmental gain. For every dolphin saved in the eastern Pacific, thousands of immature tuna and dozens of sharks, turtles, and other marine animals died in the western Pacific fishing process. Page 103. The green movement can have a positive impact on the U.S. labor force. Emerging renewable energy and energy-efficient industries currently account for more than 3 million jobs and are expected to create many more in engineering, manufacturing, construction, accounting, and management. Environmental quality is a public good. That is, everyone gets to enjoy it regardless of who pays for it. The challenge for companies is to find the public goods that will appeal to their customers. Many corporations are publishing reports that document their net social contribution. To do that, a company must measure its positive social contributions and subtract its negative social impacts. We discuss that process next. Social auditing. Can we measure whether organizations are making social responsibility an integral part of top management's decision making? The answer is yes, and the term that represents that measurement is social auditing. A social audit is a systemic evaluation of an organization's progress towards implementing socially responsible and responsive programs. One of the major problems of conducting a social audit is establishing procedures for measuring a firm's activities and their effects on society. What should a social audit measure? Many consider workplace issues to include areas such as the environment, product safety, community relations, military weapons, contracting, international operations, and human rights, and respect for the rights of local people. It remains a question whether organizations should add up positive action. It remains a question whether organizations should add up positive actions like charitable donations and pollution control efforts, and then subtract negative effects like layoffs and overall pollution created to get a net social contribution, or should they just record positive actions? What do you think? However they are conducted, social audits force organizations to consider their social responsibility beyond the level of just feeling good or managing public relations. Rainforest Action Network. The goal of the Rainforest Action Network, an environmental activist group, is to show companies that it is possible to do well by doing good. It conducts public campaigns designed to put consumer pressure on companies that refuse to adopt responsible environmental policies. RAN has helped convince dozens of corporations to change their practices, including Home Depot, Citigroup, Burger King, and Goldman Sachs. In addition to social audits conducted by companies themselves, 5 types of groups serve as watchdogs to monitor how well companies enforce their ethical and social responsibility policies. Page 104. 1. Socially conscious investors insist that a company extended its own high standards to its suppliers. Social responsibility investing, SRI, is on the rise. There are more than 530,000 SRI funds in the United States. Investors in these funds helped meet their own financial goals as well as help society. Nearly 60% of the SRI funds beat the Russell 1000 index in the last 5-year period, compared to only 35% of their conventional peers. 2. Socially conscious research organizations such as Ethisphere analyze and report on corporate social responsibility efforts. 3. Environmentalists apply pressure by naming companies that don't abide by environmentalist standards. After months of protests coordinated by the San Francisco-based Rainforest Action Network, RAN, JP Morgan Chase and Co. adopted guidelines that restrict its lending and underwriting practices for industrial projects likely to have a negative impact on the environment. RAN activists first go after an industry leader like JP Morgan, then tackle smaller companies. We call it rank 'em and spank 'em, says RAN's executive director. 4. Union officials hunt down violations and force companies to comply to avoid negative publicity. 5. Customers make buying decisions based on their social conscience. Many companies surveyed are adjusting their environmental and social responsibility strategies because of the number of customers that factor these into their buying decisions. As you can see, it isn't enough for a company to be bright when it comes to ethics and social responsibility. It also has to convince its customers and society that it's right. Test prep. What is corporate social responsibility and how does it relate to each of a business's major stakeholders? What is a social audit and what kinds of activities does it monitor? International Ethics and Social Responsibility, LO 4-6. Analyze the role of U.S. businesses in influencing ethical behavior and social responsibility in global markets. Ethical problems and issues of social responsibility are not unique to the United States. Influence peddling or bribery charges have been brought against top officials in Brazil, China, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Italy, Japan, Pakistan, and South Korea. What is new about the moral and ethical standards by which government leaders are being judged? They are much stricter than in the past. Top leaders are now being held to higher standards. Nike has outsourced the manufacture of its products to plants in other countries and has weathered much criticism for operating in low-wage nations where child labor is common. The company has taken many corrective measures, including working with other companies and advocacy groups on a set of common labor standards and factory guidelines. Can a successful firm overcome past ethical errors? Many U.S. businesses also demand socially responsible behavior from their international suppliers, making sure they don't violate U.S. human rights and environmental standards. Clothing manufacturer PVH, makers of such brands as Calvin Klein and Tommy Hilfiger, will cancel orders from suppliers that violate its ethical, environmental, and human rights code. Dow Chemical expects suppliers to conform to tough U.S. pollution and safety laws rather than just to local laws of their respective countries. McDonald's denied rumors that one of its suppliers grazes cattle on cleared rainforest land, but wrote a ban on the practice anyway. In contrast, are companies criticized for exploiting workers in less developed countries? Nike, the world's largest athletic shoe company, has been accused by human rights and labor groups of treating its workers poorly while lavishing millions of dollars on star athletes to endorse its products. Cartoonist Gary Trudeau featured an anti-Nike campaign in his popular syndicated series, Doonesbury. Nike worked hard to improve its reputation. Nike monitors efforts to improve labor conditions in its over 600 contract factories that are subject to local culture and economic conditions. The company released the names and locations of its factories, both as a show of transparency and to encourage its competitors to work on improving conditions as well. While Nike's efforts had little impact at first, conditions have improved in many of its suppliers' factories. However, even though factory workers earn more than they did years ago, they still must survive on poverty wages. Making things worse, the COVID-19 pandemic had a devastating impact on the garment workers' wages and working conditions. 70% of the workers interviewed said their wages were cut during the pandemic. Keep in mind that many other major companies share these factories with Nike and pay the same low wages for long hours. Page 105. Reaching Beyond Our Borders. Ethical Culture Clash. The extension of corporations' reach into communities across the globe has led to many questions. For which communities are the companies responsible? Are domestic operations more important than foreign ones? Should the interests of employees be put first, or is the company's image the main priority? Here's an example of how corporate ethics can clash with cultural ethics. Carlos, the oldest son of a poor South American cloth peddler, managed to move to the United States, earn an engineering degree, and get a job with a large telecommunications company. After 5 years, Carlos seemed to have bought into the company culture and was happy to be granted a transfer back to his home country. He was told that the company expected him to live there in a safe and presentable home of his choice. To help him afford such a residence, his employer agreed to reimburse him with a maximum of $2,000 a month for the cost of his rent and servants. Each month, Carlos submitted rental receipts for exactly $2,000. The company later found out that Carlos was living in what was, by Western standards, a shack in a dangerous area of town. Such a humble home could not have cost more than $200 a month. The company was concerned for Carlos's safety as well as for the effect his residence would have on its image. The human resource manager was also worried about Carlos's lack of integrity, given he had submitted false receipts for reimbursement. Carlos was upset with what he considered the company's invasion of his privacy. He argued he should receive the full $2,000 monthly reimbursement all employees received. He explained his choice of housing by saying he was making sacrifices so he could send the extra money to his family and put his younger siblings through school. This was especially important since his father had died and his family had no one else to depend on. He tried to make the company understand that for him to do anything less than send the money to his family would be defiling the honor of his late father. Often it is difficult to understand what others perceive as ethical. Different situations often turn the clear waters of rightness downright muddy. Carlos was trying to do the honorable thing for his family, yet the company's wish to have its higher level people live in safe housing is not unreasonable, given the dangerous conditions of the city in which Carlos lived. The policy of housing reimbursement supports the company's intent to make its employees stay in the country reasonably comfortable and safe, not to increase their salaries. If Carlos worked in the United States, where he would not receive a housing supplement, it would be unethical for him to falsify expense reports in order to receive more money to send to his family. In South America, though, the issue is not so clear. Page 106. Why has Nike's monitoring program not been as successful as the company hoped? One reason is that in emerging economies, government regulations tend to be weak, which leaves companies to police their suppliers. That's a major task for a company like Nike, which produces 98% of its shoes in hundreds of factories in many different countries. Another reason is that a buyer, Nike, has different degrees of leverage. This leverage is based on how long Nike has worked with a supplier or how much of the factory's revenue depends on Nike alone. The fairness of requiring international suppliers to adhere to U.S. ethical standards is not as clear-cut as you might think. For example, a gift in one culture can be a bribe in another. Is it always ethical for companies to demand compliance with the standards of their own countries? What about countries where child labor is accepted and families depend on children's salaries for survival? Should foreign companies doing business in the United States expect U.S. companies to comply with their ethical standards? Since multinational corporations span different societies, should they conform to any society's standards? Why are some U.S. retailers applauded for not importing goods made in Chinese prisons when there are many prison-based enterprises in the United States? None of these questions are easy to answer, but they suggest the complexity of social responsibility in international markets. See the reaching beyond our borders box for an example of an ethical culture clash. In the 1970s, the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, discussed in Chapter 3, sent a chill throughout the U.S. business community by criminalizing the act of paying foreign business or government leaders to get business. Many U.S. executives complained that this law put their businesses at a competitive disadvantage when bidding against non-U.S. companies, since foreign companies don't have to abide by it. To identify some form of common global ethics and fight corruption in global markets, partners in the Organization of American States signed the Inter-American Convention Against Corruption. The United Nations adopted a formal condemnation of corporate bribery, as did the European Union and the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. The International Organization for Standardization, ISO, published a standard on social responsibility called ISO 26000, with guidelines on product manufacturing, fair pay rates, appropriate employee treatment, and hiring practices. These standards are advisory only and will not be used for certification purposes. The formation of a single set of international rules governing multinational corporations is unlikely in the near future. In many places, fight corruption remains just a slogan, but even a slogan is a start. Test prep. How are U.S. businesses demanding socially responsible behavior from their international suppliers? Why is it unlikely that there will be a single set of international rules governing multinational companies soon? Summary LO 4-1. Explain why obeying the law is only the first step in behaving ethically. How is legality different from ethics? Ethics goes beyond obeying laws to include abiding by the moral standards accepted by society. Ethics reflects people's proper relationships with one another. Legality is more limiting. It refers only to laws written to protect people from fraud, theft, and violence. LO 4-2. Ask the 3 questions you need to answer when faced with a potentially unethical action. How can we tell if our business decisions are ethical? We can put our business decisions through an ethics check by asking 3 questions. 1. Is it legal? 2. Is it balanced? And 3. How will it make me feel? LO 4-3. Describe management's role in setting ethical standards. What is management's role in setting ethical standards? Managers often set formal ethical standards, but more important are the messages they send through their actions. Management's tolerance or intolerance of ethical misconduct influences employees more than any written ethics code. LO 4-4. Distinguish between compliance-based and integrity-based ethics codes and list the 6 steps in setting up a corporate ethics code. What's the difference between compliance-based and integrity-based ethics codes? Whereas compliance-based ethics codes are concerned with avoiding legal punishment, integrity-based ethics codes define the organization's guiding values, create an environment that supports ethically sound behavior, and stress a shared accountability among employees. LO 4-5. Define corporate social responsibility and compare corporations' responsibilities to various stakeholders. What is corporate social responsibility? Corporate social responsibility, CSR, is the concern businesses have for society. How do businesses demonstrate corporate responsibility towards stakeholders? Businesses demonstrate responsibility to stakeholders by 1. Satisfying customers with goods and services of real value. 2. Making money for investors. 3. Creating jobs for employees, maintaining job security, and seeing that hard work and talent are fairly rewarded. And 4. Creating new wealth for society, promoting social justice, and contributing to making the business's own environment a better place. How are a company's social responsibility efforts measured? How are a company's social responsibility efforts measured? A corporate social audit measures an organization's progress toward social responsibility. Some people believe the audit should add together the organization's positive actions and then subtract the negative effects to get a net social benefit. Page 108. LO 4-6. Analyze the role of U.S. businesses in influencing ethical behavior and social responsibility in global markets. How can U.S. companies influence ethical behavior and social responsibility in global markets? Many U.S. businesses are demanding socially responsible behavior from their international suppliers by making sure their suppliers do not violate U.S. human rights and environmental standards. Companies such as PVH and Dow Chemical will not import products from companies that do not meet their ethical and social responsibility standards. Key terms: compliance-based ethics codes. Compliance-based ethics codes emphasize preventing unlawful behavior and increasing control and penalizing wrongdoers. Corporate philanthropy. Corporate philanthropy includes charitable donations to nonprofit groups of all kinds. In 2021, corporations gave more than $21 billion to philanthropic efforts. Some make long-term commitments to one cause, such as McDonald's, Ronald McDonald Houses for families whose children with critical illnesses require treatment away from home. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is by far the nation's largest philanthropic foundation, with assets of more than $55 billion. Corporate policy. Corporate policy refers to the position a firm takes on social and political issues. For example, Patagonia's corporate policy includes this statement: a love of wild and beautiful places demands participation in the fight to save them and to help reverse the steep decline in the overall environmental health of our planet. Patagonia founder Yvon Chouinard is so committed to combating climate change that he gave away the company, valued at approximately $3 billion, to a newly established trust and nonprofit dedicated to using all the profits not reinvested in the company toward battling the climate crisis. Corporate social initiatives. Corporate social Corporate social initiatives include enhanced forms of corporate philanthropy. Corporate social initiatives differ from traditional philanthropy in that they are more directly related to the company's competencies. For example, three of the largest global logistics and transportation companies, Agility, UPS, and Maersk, work together to support humanitarian efforts during large-scale natural disasters. Their emergency relief teams go anywhere in the world to provide support in aviation, warehousing, transportation, reporting, and communications. Corporate social responsibility. Corporate social responsibility, CSR. Corporate social responsibility, CSR, is the concern businesses have for the welfare of society, not just for their owners. CSR goes well beyond being ethical. It is based on a commitment to integrity, fairness, and respect. Ethics. We define ethics as society's accepted standards of moral behavior, that is, behaviors accepted by society as right rather than wrong. Many Americans today have few moral absolutes. Many decided situationally whether it's okay to steal, lie, or text and drive. They seem to think that what is right is whatever works best for the individual, that everybody has to work out for themselves the difference between right and wrong. Such thinking may be part of the behavior that has led to scandals in government and business. Insider trading. A few investors, however, have chosen unethical means to improve their financial health. For example, insider trading uses private company information to further insiders' own fortunes or those of their family and friends. In 2014, a judge sentenced former hedge fund trader Matthew Martoma to 9 years in prison for overseeing the largest insider trading scheme in history. While working as a portfolio manager at SAC Capital, Martoma made a series of illegal trades that earned the company $275 million. The hedge fund's founder, Stephen Cohen, managed to avoid jail time but was forced to pay a record $1.8 billion fine. Integrity-based ethics codes. Integrity-based ethics codes define the organization's guiding values, create an environment that supports ethically and sound behavior, and stress shared accountability. Social audit. A social audit is a systemic evaluation of an organization's progress toward implementing socially responsible and responsive programs. One of the major problems of conducting a social audit is establishing procedures for measuring a firm's activities and their effects on society. What should a social audit measure? Many consider workplace issues to include areas such as the environment, product safety, community relations, military weapons, contracting, international operations, and human rights, and respect for the rights of local people. Whistleblowers. An ethics office must be set up with which employees can communicate anonymously. Whistleblowers, insiders who report illegal or unethical behavior, must feel protected from retaliation. The Sarbanes-Oxley Act protects whistleblowers by requiring all public corporations to allow employee concerns about accounting and auditing to be submitted confidentially and anonymously. The Act also requires reinstatement and back pay to people who were punished by their employers for passing on information about fraud to authorities. We cover Sarbanes-Oxley in more detail in Chapter 17. In 2010, the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act was signed into law. Read more detail about Dodd-Frank in Chapter 18. The law includes a bounty provision that allows corporate whistleblowers who provide information that leads to a successful enforcement action to collect 10 to 30% of the total penalty for violations that exceed $1 million. The largest award was $266.4 million, and yes, it is taxable, to former Biogen Executive Vice President Michael Balduniak in 2022 for exposing that the pharmaceutical company paid illegal kickbacks to induce physicians to prescribe Biogen's multiple sclerosis drugs. Critical thinking. Think of a situation that tested your ethical behavior. For example, maybe your best friend forgot about a term paper due the next day and asked if they could copy a paper you wrote for another instructor last semester. 1. What are your alternatives, and what are the consequences of each? 2. Would it have been easier to resolve the dilemma if you had asked yourself the 3 questions listed in the chapter? Try answering them now and see whether you would have made a different choice. Putting principles to work. Purpose: to demonstrate the level of commitment one business has to social responsibility. Purpose: to demonstrate the level of commitment one business has to social responsibility. Exercise: according to Household Products and Personal Care Company 7th Generation, corporate responsibility is in its DNA as it considers the effects of its actions on the next 7 generations. It strives to limit the effect of all aspects of its products on the environment, from development to their production, purchase, use, and disposal. Visit the company's website at 7thgeneration.com. Then answer the following questions. 1. What is the social mission of 7th Generation? 2. How is 7th Generation involved in improving the Vermont community? 3. How does seventh generation communicate the company's social mission to its customers? Developing career skills. Key: team, analytic, communication, technology. 1. What sources have helped shape your personal code of ethics and morality? What influences, if any, have ever pressured you to compromise those standards? Think of an experience you had at work or school that tested your ethical standards. How did you resolve your dilemma? Now that time has passed, are you comfortable with the decision you made? If not, explain what you would do differently. 2. Do a little investigative reporting of your own. Go online and search for a public interest group in your community. Identify its officers, objectives, sources, and amount of financial support, and size and characteristics of membership. List some examples of its recent actions and/or accomplishments. You should be able to choose from environmental groups, animal protection groups, political action committees, and so on. Visit the website of the local Chamber of Commerce, the Better Business Bureau, or local government agencies for help. 3. You're the manager of a coffee house called the Morning Cup. One of your best employees desires to be promoted to a managerial position. However, the owner is grooming their less qualified child for the job. The owner's nepotism may hurt a valuable employee's chance for advancement, but complaining may hurt your own chances for promotion. What do you do? 4. Go to the website of a local corporation and search for its written ethics code. Would you classify its code as compliance-based or integrity-based? Explain. 5. What effects have the new laws protecting whistleblowers had on its business environment? What effects have the new laws protecting whistleblowers had on the business's environment? On the business environment. Go online or to the library to research individuals who reported their employers' illegal and/or unethical behavior. Did the companies change their policies? If so, what effect have these policies had on the company's stakeholders? What effect did reporting the problems have on the whistleblowers themselves? Page 109. Career exploration. Of course, ethical behavior is important on every career path. However, if you are interested in pursuing a career that is more focused on helping people, society, and the environment, here are a few to consider. Find out about the tasks performed, skills needed, pay, and opportunity outlook in these fields in the Occupational Outlook Handbook, OOH, at bls.gov. Compliance officer examines, evaluates, and investigates conformity with laws and regulations. Green job that produces goods or provides services that benefit the environment or conserve natural resources. Search in the OOH for careers in water conservation, sustainable forestry, biofuels, geothermal energy, environmental remediation, solar power, recycling, and so on. Social and community service manager. coordinates and supervises social service programs and community organizations, manages staff members who provide social services to the public, fundraising manager, organizes events and campaigns to raise money and other donations for an organization, increases awareness of an organization's work, goals, and financial needs. Social worker, helps people solve and cope with problems in their everyday lives. Video Case 1, McGraw-Hill Connect, Conscious Marketing at Gluten-Free Bars.
For a long time, and especially in publicly held companies, profit was king in business. But that has changed. Although marketers have always had to consider ethics, now companies must demonstrate to consumers that they are socially conscious as well.
All natural, non-GMO ingredients. Organic crisp.
Conscious marketing is an approach to marketing that focuses on 4 key principles: having a higher purpose, considering stakeholders, creating a conscious company culture, and using ethical decision-making. The Gluten-Free Bar, makers of certified gluten-free products such as bars, bites, and breakfast pouches, is a conscious marketer and has been from its inception in 2010.
What we're trying to do is make something that people really enjoy eating, that makes them feel good, and we're trying to do it in ways that are better for not only our consumers, but our suppliers and our team members here. So everything we try to do, we're trying to make the world a little bit better place, one piece at a time, and just generally make people happy with the products that we make. And
the GFB takes conscious marketing so seriously that they became a certified B Corporation, or B Corp. B Corp stands for Benefit Corporation, which is a business that balances profit and purpose.
So we're a certified B Corp, and that means that we actually took a commitment to a triple bottom line approach to business. So that's people, planet, and profits. We consider them all equally in our decision making and in how we run our business. We don't put profits above everything else.
B Corps are legally required to consider the impact of its decisions on its stakeholders, which is not only owners or corporate shareholders, but include customers, employees and their families, supply chain partners, government agencies, the physical environment, and the community in which the firm operates.
When we first started making products, we were aiming to satisfy the need of people that needed to eat gluten-free and make sure that we created something that they can trust. So that gluten-free certification is one of the most important parts of our business.
The GFB has a core value of "we win together." And one of the ways it demonstrates that to its employees is when the company does well, all employees get a raise.
One of the great things about starting our own manufacturing facility was that we are able to employ team members from the community. Right now, about 40% of our workforce are returning citizens, or those folks that were formerly incarcerated. We've been able to offer health care benefits to all the team members here. In addition to a low-cost 401k, we have really generous vacation and sick day benefits.
Being a conscious marketer also means considering the needs of your supply chain.
One area that is important to sustainable businesses is local sourcing, and a lot of our ingredients, unfortunately, aren't found locally. But that doesn't mean that we can't rely on local distributors to get those ingredients, or local manufacturers of our packaging, or of our food production equipment, or any professional services. So everything that we can source locally, we do.
With its Zero Waste initiative, the GFB is taking concrete steps to help the environment.
9 out of every 10 pounds of waste that leaves here cannot go in the dumpster. It's either getting recycled, upcycled, reused, composted. So what we're trying to do is get 12 continuous months of this 90% diversion rate. Hopefully within the next 10 more months of this 90% plus diversion rate will actually get us this true zero waste certification, and we're going to be really excited if we can make that happen.
The GFB has created a socially conscious culture throughout the company. That culture has to start at the top.
My brother Marshall and I have really worked hard at facilitating a socially conscious culture here at the GFB. And to us, that just really means doing the right thing and trying to set the right example for the team here. And whether that means, going the extra mile and recycling all the things that we're trying to do, or if it's going out and setting an example, volunteering locally, all those little things add up to setting the right example for the team here, and that's how we view socially conscious culture.
When it became a certified B Corporation, the GFB was officially considered a conscious marketer. But even before that, founders Elliot and Marshall Rader were dedicated to balancing profit with purpose.
When we think about our consumers, we know more and more they care about who's making their product, where it's coming from, how it's sourced. We see the growth of companies that have a conscious mindset. I think that that's going to continue for a long time.
The economist Milton Friedman once said that a company's only responsibility is to make a profit for its shareholders. For many years, these words served as a guiding principle for countless businesses. But today, a focus on corporate social responsibility, CSR, has shifted business leaders toward addressing the needs of all stakeholders, not just stockholders. CEOs from major U.S. companies have developed a new definition of corporate purpose that emphasizes investing in employees, supporting communities, dealing ethically with suppliers, and offering fair prices. Many firms depend on conscious marketing in order to make consumers aware of these values. Conscious marketing revolves around 4 key concepts: having a higher purpose, embracing stakeholders, creating a conscious company culture, and making ethical decisions. Gluten-free bars, GFB, a maker of certified gluten-free snacks, has been an advocate of conscious marketing since launching in 2010. According to co-founder Elliot Rader, the company works hard to make sure that both its employees and suppliers are happy and fulfilled. GFB takes its role so seriously that soon after launching it, became a certified B Corp, or Benefit Corporation. Page 110. As a B Corp, GFB must consider how its actions impact not only shareholders, but also customers, employees, and their families, supply chain partners, government agencies, the environment, and the community at large. GFB's motto is "We win together," meaning that if the company does well, so does everyone else. So does everybody else. The company provides benefits like healthcare, 401k, and generous vacation time and sick days. GFB is also dedicated to giving second chances to people with criminal records. In fact, almost 40% of GFB's employees were formerly incarcerated. Being a conscious marketer also means developing a sustainable supply chain. GFB works with local food sources and nearby manufacturers to keep its carbon footprint low. Under its zero waste production initiative, all of the company's waste is either recycled, reused, or composted. As much as 9 out of every 10 pounds of waste produced by GFB gets recycled, and the company is always working to make further improvements to this system. Gluten-free bars hopes its motto will inspire other American companies to do their part in making the world a better place. GFB's leadership remains committed to its socially conscious missions and pledges to keep the interests of its stakeholders at the forefront. The company's co-founders say that the customers trust the products GFB makes and care about who's producing them, where they're coming from, and how they're sourced. As more businesses develop CSR strategies, it could be hard to survive by following Milton Friedman's old advice. Think it over. 1. Should companies consider all stakeholders or strictly shareholders when making business decisions? Why? 2. How does conscious marketing benefit companies like gluten-free bars? 3. Would you be more inclined to purchase products from a company certified as a B Corp? Video Case 2. McGraw-Hill Connect. Best Buy helps save the planet.
Best Buy recently ranked #1 on Barron's list of 100 most sustainable companies. This is the second time in 3 years that Best Buy has earned this distinction. Sustainability is a relatively new metric used in evaluating businesses. It used to be that companies' success was primarily gauged by revenue or profitability. These days, many companies, like Best Buy, operate under a triple bottom line model: profit, people, and planet. Meeting these bottom lines isn't easy, in part because there's no universal standard for them. Each company must decide for itself what it can do, how to get there, and how to measure its success.
I've been in an environmental role at Best Buy my entire career here. And in that, we've set aggressive goals in carbon, in sustainable products, and in eliminating waste in the program, so recycling.
Even once these responsibilities are laid out, there are many different ways to actually fulfill them. As a steward of the environment, for instance, Best Buy focused on innovating their operations and helping customers reduce their carbon emissions.
We set goals around providing our customers more sustainable products. The backbone of that program is Energy Star. So we set goals to reduce our customers' energy consumption by 20% by 2030, and in that process, save them $5 billion in utility expense.
To join other leading companies committed to being carbon neutral by 2040, Best Buy signed the Climate Pledge in 2020. A pledge like this can guide a corporation's social responsibility efforts, which can accelerate change and bring the business community together to create a more sustainable future for generations to come.
We joined the Climate Pledge in 2020. With that, we accelerated our goals from being net zero by 2050 to net zero by 2040. The Climate Pledge has been very important to us in accelerating our work and connecting with some of these other businesses that want to address climate change as quickly as Best Buy.
Best Buy has launched several company-wide initiatives to help the environment. One of those is within the Geek Squad, a subsidiary of Best Buy. The Geek Squad does home visits to help customers with their computers or any type of technology. This means a lot of geekmobiles on the road and a lot of emissions.
Many of our customers are familiar with the old Geek Squad Volkswagen Beetle. Transitioned in our last cycle to the Prius C. And just in doing that transition from the Volkswagen to a hybrid vehicle, purchased the same number of vehicles, but it's the equivalent of taking over 260 Geek Squad vehicles off the road to provide that same service. It is a direct presence for our consumers when you see those vehicles out there with a branded Prius C of Geek Squad, helping address your technical issues at home, that we're also putting a statement out there that it's important for us to serve our customers and their communities in the most sustainable way possible.
Finally, Best Buy is addressing the problem of electronic waste through several sustainability-minded programs.
We've had programs in place where we've collected over 2.4 billion pounds of consumer goods, that's appliances and electronics, and we're partnering with third-party recyclers that meet all of our standards, meet our certification requirements. Therefore, we can offer kind of the trusted source of electronics recycling. So you may bring your product back to Best Buy for recycling because it's no longer of value to you. But once that product is in our hands, we will look at that product for parts reclamation, whole product refurbishment. Can we get the most value out of what's left in this product? And if we can't, we'll send it through the recycling stream, get to the commodities, get to the plastics, get to these things that are still of value.
For Best Buy, a policy of corporate social responsibility has paid off all around. The company's ethical behavior has been good for people and planet, and benefits Best Buy itself.
Our customers and our employees expect it. This is table stakes at this point. The need for climate action is we needed something now. Environment demands it. So that's core to Best Buy's belief, the culture of Best Buy. We're doing it because it's the right thing to do.
When you hear the words Best Buy, you probably think of an electronics store, not a company that's been committed to saving the planet for years. Barron's magazine placed the technology retailer at the top of its list of most sustainable companies. This is a distinction that Best Buy has worked hard to achieve and is committed to continuing in the future. For decades, most American businesses measured success solely in terms of revenue and profitability. Today, though, companies like Best Buy operate using a triple bottom line model that focuses on profit, people, and planet, achieving the goals laid out by the 3 Ps is difficult since there is no universal standard by which to measure progress. Instead, companies committed to sustainability must determine their own objectives and how they can be reached. Tim Dunn, head of environmental sustainability at Best Buy, has focused on green issues throughout his career. According to him, Best Buy has set aggressive targets on carbon reduction, sustainable products, and eliminating waste through efforts like recycling. To achieve these goals, Best Buy focuses on innovating its operations and helping customers reduce their carbon emissions. The backbone of this objective is the Energy Star certification, which informs consumers about sustainable products. Best Buy hopes that this label will help customers reduce their energy consumption by 20% by 2030, saving them $5 billion in utility expenses in the process. In 2020, Best Buy signed the Climate Pledge, joining other big companies in their commitment to becoming carbon neutral by 2040. This pledge provides the electronics retailer with a guide for future social responsibility efforts, while also aligning it with the business community's larger sustainability goals. For instance, while the company's tech support staff once drove to home visits in Volkswagens, the famed Geek Squad now travels exclusively in Prius C hybrid cars. This effort alone was equivalent to taking 260 vehicles off the road. The company also launched several programs to address the problem of electronic waste, partnering with verified recyclers that meet Best Buy's strict standards. All of these efforts underscore Best Buy's commitment to people and the planet, a responsibility that both consumers and employees expect from modern companies. Thinking it over. 1. Do you think Best Buy's commitment to sustainability will help or hinder the company's long-term profitability? Why? 2. Does Best Buy seem to be focused more toward a compliance-based ethics code or an integrity-based ethics code? 3. Why is the climate pledge signed by Best Buy and others important to achieving sustainability? Page 111, page 112, page 113. Notes. 1. Anfield, what caused the Great Recession? Business Insider, businessinsider.com. August 8th, 2022. Kimberly Amadio, causes of the 2008 financial crisis. The Balance, thebalancemoney.com. December 13th, 2022. 2008 recession, what it was and what caused it. Investopedia, investopedia.com. February 7th, 2023. The Great Recession Worldwide. Statista, statista.com. February 14th, 2023. 2. The Golden Rule, aka Ethics of Reciprocity. Religious Tolerance, religioustolerance.org. Accessed February 2023. 3. Amy Yotopoulos. 3 reasons why people don't volunteer. Stanford Center on Longevity. longevity.stanford.edu. Accessed February 2023. 1 in 4 Americans volunteer. National Conference on Citizenship. ncoc.org. Accessed February 2023. Aaron Schneider and Tim J. Marshall. At height of pandemic, more than half of people age 16 and over helped neighbors. 23% formally volunteered. U.S. Census Bureau, census.gov. January 25th, 2023. Volunteering and Civic Life in America. AmeriCorps, americorps.gov. Accessed February 2023. 4. Turnitin, turnitin.com. Accessed February 2023. 5. Does everyone cheat in high school? The Healthy Journal, thehealthyjournal.com. Accessed February 2023. Frederick Hess, college admissions is facing a cheating epidemic. Fox News, foxnews.com. January 31st, 2023. Beatrice Nolan, college professors are considering creative ways to stop students from using AI to cheat. Business Insider, businessinsider.com. January 21st, 2023. Callie Huang, alarmed by AI chatbots, universities start revamping how they teach. The New York Times, newyorktimes.com. January 16th, 2023. 6. Shonda Hood, Academic and Workplace Integrity, International Center for Academic Integrity, academicintegrity.org. May 15th, 2022. Academic integrity as a precursor to workplace ethics. Turnitin, turnitin.com. Accessed February 2023. 7. Kenneth Blanchard, and Norman Vincent Peale. The Power of Ethical Management, New York, William Morrow, 1996. 8. Prashant Malavia. Why the U.S. needs to apply the principles of ethical leadership in engaging the next generation. International Business Times, ibtimes.com, January 23, 2022. Richard Giamento. Leadership can prepare for changing business trends with a longer-term lens. Forbes, Forbes.com, February 6, 2023. Alexandra Twin. Business Ethics, Investopedia, Investopedia.com, September 14th, 2022. Muhammad Shahidul Islam and Rubaba Tahassan. The Value of Business Ethics, The Business Standard, tbsnews.net, February 10th, 2023. 9. Edisphere announces the 2022 World's Most Ethical Companies. Edisphere, edisphere.com, accessed February 2023. 10. Taylor Telford. Incentives can lead employees to cheat or lie at work. The Washington Post, washingtonpost.com, November 28, 2022. Kevin Wack, former Wells Fargo executive, opens up about leadership failures during account scandal. WBUR.org, February 17, 2023. 11. Erica Salmon Byron. Ways to Elevate Ethical Culture. Edisphere, edisphere.com. Accessed March 2023. Ahmed Adil. Daisy Moy Hung Ki. Anila Sadef Mubashir. Sarmina Samed, ETAL. Leaders' Ambition and Followers' Cheating Behavior. Frontiers in, frontiersin.org, January 26, 2023. 12. Dean Peak. A culture of ethical behavior is essential to business success. Business News Daily, businessnewsdaily.com, January 23, 2023. Donald Soul and Charles Soul. How to Fix a Toxic Culture. MIT Sloan Management Review, sloanreview.mit.edu, September 28, 2022. Gary Drinick. How Getting Data Ethics Right Improves Business Outcomes. Forbes, Forbes.com, November 4th, 2022. Sarbanes-Oxley vs. Dodd-Frank. Investopedia, Investopedia.com, November 30th, 2022. Andrei Blocken. The Impact of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act of 2002. Investopedia, Investopedia.com, January 17th, 2022. Susie Allen. 5 research-backed strategies for building an ethical culture at work. Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University. Insight.kellogg.northwestern.edu, January 5th, 2022. National Whistleblower Center, whistleblowers.org, Accessed February 2023. 13. Constantine Cannon, Top 10 Whistleblower Awards of 2022. Lexology, lexology.com, February 1st, 2023. Part 2. Business Owners HIP, Starting a Small Business. 5. How to Form a Business. Page 114.